Okay, so there's a few people that have asked how I set everything up, like how I route it, basically MIDI and audio. And I've always thought that's a strange concept, a strange interest, but I do get why, because it's like I spent ages trying to figure stuff out. So what I thought I would do is go through how I route most of my gear. When I say most, I just mean what I've got on at the minute. I should perhaps stand here and then you can sort of see what I'm using. But what I will say is I change it loads, so it's never like, it's not static. I don't keep everything rooted in the same way in terms of audio ins and outs or MIDI ins and outs, or how it works with my PC, but I'll start from the beginning. So let's just pretend I don't do stuff doorless, because I do, but at the minute I'm massively working within Ableton. I was a long time Cubase user, like 21 years or something of Cubase, and then moved to Ableton about 7 or 8 years ago, but alongside Cubase. But anyway, so using a DAW and using a push to. That's straightforward, nice and simple, works a treat, absolutely lovely. Best controller I've used that integrates with the DAW. It's perfect. Anyway, so that aside, right, so I use a Digitact a lot and analog heat a lot. Analog heat, bits of mixing, a lot of mastering type stuff. I'm not a mastering engineer, so I know that's a bit contentious. 303 clone. I've just got my West Pass back today. No, the other day. I've just hooked it in today. It failed basically on me. I sent it back, and Create Audio were amazing, and they sorted it out, and it's back and it's working wickedly. Simple Yamaha tiny little mixing desk, just because I ain't got enough inputs and outputs. I do have a lot of inputs. I use a Moto. Hopefully my camera is going to work okay here. Someone pointed out, rightly so, about my shutter speed, so I've just been mucking around with that. Yeah, so a Moto there, which is nice. A Moog Mother, which isn't on today, but it is hooked up and ready. 909 clone, which is lovely. My favourite, I don't know if it's my favourite synth in the world, but I absolutely love it. Just like this isn't focusing. Oh yeah, it is. Pro 3, bar sequential. Second favourite. No, equally favourite. Grandmother, absolutely love it. Mini Freak, proper beautiful. 808 clone, dead nice, really nice actually. A MIDI keyboard, but with like it's a Roland, so it's purely MIDI, but you get the same keyboard as all the high-end Roland stuff, and the keyboard's stunning. Recently got back into guitar, so a bass and just your standard 6-string electric. Those with a stomp. Doesn't seem to be focusing out. I want it to focus, man. Let's just double check. Oh yeah, maybe it's just my eyes. Getting old, man. And that is what I'm using at the minute. I do have other stuff hooked up, which I'm just kind of, I guess, not really using, like these last few weeks, I guess. Same with, I was massively into scratching. There's like some of my scratch stuff. I've got some mixers all over the shop, other turntables. I've got 7 turntables, man. It's crazy, but I loved it. Anyway, and I'm not using at the minute my Pultec type clones, although they sound wicked. So, in terms of how I route everything together, put everything together, I start with Ableton as basically the master clock, because if you've ever tried to clock Ableton with anything else, you might have noticed this, you might not, but it's not the happiest. It's happier as the master, right? But what you can do, if you don't want to use Ableton to be the master clock for everything else, what I do is I get it to trigger the Digitact, and then I use the Digitact as my master clock for everything else. But really it's Ableton, but my Digitact is controlling everything. So I go Digitact, MIDI out, try my best here. Well, I'll have to watch my finger a few times. MIDI out, right? So that, should have checked all this out first. There are cables everywhere. I redid all these cables literally a few weeks ago. So that should be going into, oh, my speakers have just turned off. Let me just turn them back on again. Oh, speaker wise, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. I use these alphas, and I've only had my second pair of monitors. I used to try all sorts of speakers. I need to dust. God, you see stuff when you're doing things like this. Yeah, these alphas, oh, I love them. Like, they're very, very true and honest of what the sound is, which is what you want. Anyway, so Digitact, MIDI out is going into, it will be the Pro 3 MIDI in, basically, right? And then the trick to all this, and there's a lot of conversation about latency and daisy chaining and stuff. I'll talk about. I've looked into that for a bazillion years, but so I'm quite happy to talk about that. But what I'm doing is using your standard MIDI DIN 5-pin cables, and I'm daisy chaining, right? So I'm going Digitact, Pro 3, Grandmother, Mini Freak at the minute, straight to the 909, and then to the West Pest. Now, I'm USB triggering the 303, so USB straight to my PC. And that's kind of how all of those are sort of talking to each other. So really what I'm doing is daisy chaining, 5-pin, MIDI DIN, out the Digitact, which I've tried so many different variations of this, and I'll tell you what, I think the Digitact clock is rock solid. And it's going into all of this lot and triggering all of this lot. And then I've got this set up so that I can either play on my synths, so Oh god, it sounds so good, that West Pest does, you know. Missed it. Or I can play each one on, say, here. Apart from this, just because you can do it, but I'm quite happy to have this triggered basically. So I'm getting Ableton to trigger the sequence on that. I'm also getting the Digitac to trigger the sequence on this if I want the sequence on it, but you can basically go no stop start, and you don't have to trigger the sequence on this. You can use that as your sequencer. The grandmother sequencers, like it's dead basic. You come up with some really nice kind of happy accidents and that's dead nice, but I tend to use the Digitac to sequence the grandmother, and then play a lot of this live, but I'll spend not ages, but I'll come up with something on the keys first, and then I'll sequence that in the Digitac, and then I'll play that back. The Mini Freak sequencer on that's wicked. That's the best sequencer in the world on the synth I've got, other than the Digitac. When I say other than, it's a different thing, but the sequencer on the Pro 3 is magical. Mini Freak, it's actually not that far behind in terms of capabilities, but it just doesn't have as much to work with as the Pro 3 does. But it's a brilliant sequencer. Even though I've got the Mini Freak in that's only because I might use that. I tend to use the Mini Freak sequencer instead of the Digitac. I use the Pro 3 sequencer instead of the Digitac. And I use the 303 sequencer instead of the Digitac, but they're all there for like testing out and mucking about, and then maybe using. It's nice to have both options. Then we've got the 909, which I just trigger it so that it plays. So I've got no idea what's going to play now, but there you go. So as soon as it something going on, and you'll see basically the green play button. Now it's flashing because it thinks it's paused, but it stops, and it will start again from the beginning. So in a sort of nutshell with that, it's daisy chained. It's got Ableton triggering the Digitac, and then the Digitac is triggering all of this lot in terms of triggering their sequencers, if that's what I want. But it's also I've got them set up to their own MIDI channels. So I've got like MIDI channel 1 on the grandmother. So this is, I'll put this as MIDI channel 1, 2, 3. Oh, let me just refocus that. Why the fuck? Oh, I've got my hand on there. Oh, didn't realise I was leaning on the zoom. So zoom back in. So I've got the grandmother set to MIDI channel 1. I've got the West Pest set to MIDI channel 2. The Pro 3, and then Stunning synth, and then the Mini Freak on 4. Don't necessarily use that, but I've got them set up there in case, basically. I do play my synths. It's just nice to have all the options. So play them live, use the onboard sequencers, use the Digitac sequencer. But either way, the Digitac triggers this lot on how I want it to be triggered. What's next? So the Stomp I use, it's new to me, very new. as he's getting back into the guitar. I started on the guitar like as a young teenager. Then I moved to scratching, and then I moved to sound design and production and stuff. But I'm loving this. So I've got the Moog actually synth going into this, and I've also got either the bass or the standard 6-string going into it. It's dead good. Sounds stunning on synths. I'm really looking forward to putting the West Pest into it, but I've currently got that input, well, the output of the West Pest is going to the input of the Digitact, which by the sounds of things I reckon you can imagine I use a lot. Let's just try and get a better screen. So if I put that on, okay, so that's the ins and the outs. So I use the reverb and delay on the Digitact loads, absolutely loads, because it's simple and nice actually. It's dead nice. Why is it not focusing better than that? Anyway, and then the same with the 303. So the 303's for it. So if I just solo the 303, let's see how it picks up this screen. Really shit, unless my eyes are fogged. Anyway, so right, so that's 303. I need to mute you. Right, so the 303 is going through the inputs of the Digitact, and so I've got a tiny bit of reverb on it here, but if you wang it up a bit you'll hear it. It's lovely. It's just nice on the lower bit really. A tiny bit of delay. Move the delay. Not quite the same. Get rid of them both. Nothing. Let's try and get this fucking better. There we go. Just look at my fingers now. So delay on this, and then a bit of reverb on that. Just sounds well nice. So what else can I tell you? Said it's going through a simple mixing desk. Again, that's really kind of because I've not got all the inputs and outputs that I want. But it works fine. It works like a treat. So that's good. Everything's clocked because it's either sequenced from its own sequencer, but the Digitact is clocking it, or a sequencer from the Digitact, which basically means the Digitact's going to be clocking it anyway. Yeah, bass, is this on? Let's try and get at least that in. Where are we at with that? Right, so I've got that soloed still, so let's get rid of that. Oh. So that goes through nicely in there. That is going just through the stomp. Stomp's going straight into the Motu, and Ableton's recording as many individual channels as I can, but it might be worth me explaining that if this film's okay. So in terms of Ableton and recording channels, I would record each one individually if possible, otherwise I have to mute. So say I've got like I've got the 303 going through the Digitact, but I've also got the grandmother going through the Digitact. So if I record the 303 and the grandmother at the same time, then I get that on one channel. So when it comes to things like that, although there will be a clever way of panning that, but anyway, for example, I would, for ease, I would mute either the 303 or the grandmother, record one in, new channel, unmute, open up the other one, record that, whereas everything else has got its own channel, so that's fine. But it's I'm basically about 2 to 4 channels down. I could mono stuff. So for example, the Pro 3 and the grandmother and the Mother 32 and the 303 and the West Pest, they're all mono synths. Oh god, no, it fell over. So but the Pro 3, the effects that it comes with are really good actually, but they're stereo effects. So even though it's a mono synth, I want to make use of the stereo effects, so I use 2 outs, 2 ins. The stomp at the minute is just mono out, but again it's stereo effects if you want. For stereo out, stereo ins, I'd want to make use of that as much as I possibly can. The Mini Freak can be mono, same thing. So I could cut down and plug them all in mono only, but I've got to say, if you're quite subtle with stereo effects on a mono synth, when you stack those up with like say 3 or 4 mono instruments with stereo effects, it sounds really, really nice, like quite lush actually, and it doesn't fold in on itself either, as long as you're not going crazy stereo with it. So if you sum it to mono, you barely lose anything, but if you don't sum it to mono and you keep it as it is, it does sound ever slightly better, and that's kind of what you're after. I think personally it's what I'm after anyway. And I think that's kind of it really. I thought I'd try and do a quick rundown of what I plug into what and how I use it. Oh yeah, one thing I will say is the Digitac's really good with CC. So like MIDI CC messages. So if I say, it's hard to, I need to learn my camera much better. So there's your channel. Now if you want to use like CC, that's your value of what CC you're going to affect, and it's wicked. So it's basically relying on, or I can't think of the word, but basically so the grandmother has only got a few MIDI CC things, but some of the main ones, which is nice, so you get like cut off, mod wheel and stuff, and you can sequence those through the Digitac, but obviously automate them or do, I forgot what it's called, I've been rattling on now too long. You can lock various fucking, I can't think what it's fucking called. Like P-locks, trig locks. You can do trig locks, P-locks on this with basically whatever you are able to do that with. So you can do a shitload with the Pro 3. Pretty certain you can do a lot with the Mini Freak, but I can't remember. Grandmother's quite limited, but that's fine. So again, it opens things up by using that. What else? Not really sure. Bought myself a can of this, which is ridiculously expensive. I'll focus in on that. Because the grandmother cut-off pots are crackling like fuck. And I thought, oh, I'll get like a cheap alternative, because that is dead expensive compared to the alternatives. But I thought, hang on a minute, I'm spraying it into a synth that's like worth quite a lot of money, so I'll pay for it, which is annoying because I'm not loaded. Do you know what I mean? But and the only reason why I mentioned that was because I'm gonna pull the grandmother apart. Because I'm a bit not confused, but I don't think the reverb's connected quite correctly, and I'd quite like to. Now I've got that Fader 5 stuff, the deoxit stuff, I could pull it apart, clean it up, put it back together again, but check the reverb out while I'm there. So if you are interested in that, I'll quite happily film me unscrewing my grandmother and showing you the insides and cleaning up the pots. How else have I got it set up? Yeah, so my point, I suppose what I was saying at the very beginning was change this around a lot, and I change it around for, I guess, 2 reasons. One is because, like all of us, I have a real issue about controlling latency. So I want to know, you're always going to get latency, but I want to be totally in charge of my latency. So I try loads and loads of different variations of things. I've got down here, and I tell you now, I've spent days and days and days trying various things, and a powered USB hub creates more latency, I've found, than daisy chaining with a Digitact. If a daisy chain with something else, it changes things, and that might be a bit better. But I've tried everything kind of possible. I totally understand all the settings within Ableton, and it's just hard to get it. So the way I've got it at the minute is bang on. I'm bound to try something else again soon, I don't know. But in terms of audio ins and outs, it's really nice to, say, plug something else into the Digitact or put something into any of the external ins in any of the synths. That's great. The analog heat is absolutely stunning for individual instruments, sounds, mixing, and mastering as much as I master. You know, I kind of master everything, but I'm nowhere near a mastering engineer, I can tell you that for free. But yeah, other than that, it's kind of that lot, but reconfigured all the time, and then introducing Eurorack. I've given up with. I love it. I think it's amazing, but it costs an absolute fortune. So I've just basically thought, fuck that. I'm gonna sell it. Why the fuck is that not focusing? It's doing me head in. Don't have the whole videos like this. Paramus Pro Workout, best thing ever. Still selling it. And then yeah, the other stuff. But anyway, I don't know if you've got any use out of this or not. Like I say, a few people have been like, oh, I want to see what you're using and how you use it, how you put it together. Yeah, it's definitely not my eyes. Or is it? No, it is my eyes. Yeah, and I've always been a bit reluctant because I think, well, that's possibly really boring. But yeah, if there's any aspects of this, I will have missed loads of stuff. I don't really know what people want to know about, but yeah, just ask. So there it is. That's me. My studio. I need to get to know my camera so much better than I do. But yeah, so that's it. Nice one.